Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking a walk in the Economicon. I'm your host, the Economancer, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit different. This is Grim Dawn. This is one of my favorite ARPGs since Diablo 2. I think it's true uh, true next step in ARPGs. So, as you can tell today by the thumbnail and a few of the other things, what this game is, or what today is about. So the main purpose for today is going to be talking about why I have beef with right-wing populism, or what even is right-wing populism. So for me, why I'm against it. So first, let's define populism. So that's essentially a political program or movement that is predicated on being the champion or claiming to be the champion of the common person. This is, to contrast it against, the elite control, the elite power, right? And so that's the first thing to think about when we're talking about like populism, right? So, as many of you may know, I'm a structural functionalist, and I think power and these terms that are used by many, I think they use them incorrectly, right? And I don't have problems with the elite as they stand. I have problems with the functions of society not taking care of the problems of, elite capture and stuff like that. All right, so I'm going to make really a comparison or a contrast here on what I think, the best system of right wing, quote unquote, is, and that would be right wing liberalism. And during this, I'm going to be calling this like conservatism, because essentially that's what it is in modern America. We're trying to conserve the traditions of right wing liberalism, that would be constitutional authority, stuff along those lines. I think that is extremely important when it comes to this. So, the first argument that I have, or contention, whatever you want to say, is I really do not like unions. So, first and foremost, that's an issue. Now, we've seen this strong movement of blue collar and proletariat values being integrated into the right wing, right? And we see this through like Adam Calhoun. No shot at him, but I don't agree with him being pro union and being like, oh, I'm pro union and stuff like that. All right. So with these unions, we've had the trade unions for quite some time. They're kind of always been this left wing part, but we have a lot of these pro America, pro right wing stances that comes from these, I guess you could say, institutions. And then we also have this split between, the trade unions, which are, what's gonna manifest this blue collar proletarian values, versus the unions of like public worker unions and teachers unions and stuff like that, academic unions, things that are going to be pushing this social progressivism, which a lot of this argument's really going to hinge on, like, what is and is not social progressivism, why does it matter. All right, so I don't like unions. I don't oppose unions on a case by case basis, right? So what do I mean by that is unions as they function in society, right? So if I'm a capitalist and I'm starting up a business, and the business wants to have some collective bargaining for a different labor relationship, I actually don't see any problems with that. In fact, I think that's possibly an optimal solution, especially when we think about it in cybernetic terms, where we got this uh oh, what am I doing here? Oh, okay. I'm attacking Nathaniel. Screw you, Nathaniel. But yeah, so I totally lost my place. Hold on. Um, yeah. So we have this idea of unions, especially in America, as being as having this split between this right wing and left wing unionism, right? And so this unionism, in my opinion, for the right wing blue collar proletarian values, I think it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that yes, it has some benefits and that we should look into unionism. Like I said, I don't oppose unionism, but I don't know that it's something that's greatly beneficial to society the way it's organized now. Because as of now, it just seems like a very large organization where you're going to have power concentrate to a very small minority of people, which may be beneficial on an efficiency standpoint, but I don't know that it's beneficial in general when it comes to how we should interact in society, right? Because um, the problem that happens often with almost any organization like this, there are people, this minority of people, that are going to try to exert a bunch of power politically, socially, and economically to benefit themselves, and they're going to do it under the guise of being for the people, right? And again, this is kind of this is the entirety of the problem that I have associated with right wing populism, right? So I don't agree that these large organizational structures of like the Teamsters or teachers unions is very beneficial to the system itself. I actually think it gets in the way quite often of what you're trying to do for your locale. And I also think that it causes some significant damage when it comes to like consumers versus workers. Like, don't get it twisted. I want workers to have better rights and things of that nature, but you have to also understand that there's a trade-off when it comes to how consumers are going to be treated. Um, so that's also something to take into account here. And last, I think overall, like these large organizational bodies, I think they stand antithetical to this conservative scream for freedom to pursue happiness and property, because it just turns into this arbitrary way to keep people out, right? So people don't get certain certifications, or if they don't pay enough money to this organization, they can't get a job. Historically, this was used for racist purposes, and I'm not saying that the modern form of it is racist, but a lot of it was close in the racial issues of the prior years, right? This is something that W.E.B. Du Bois had talked about when he was talking about why he didn't trust communism or American communism, um, though he ended up realizing that the workers were kind of where the battleground was going to be, and this is kind of a common frame in Marxist versus neo-Marxist, for lack of a better term, battle on whether there is any legitimacy to bringing back workers and stuff like that. So now my second one, second biggest complaint is that right-wing populism sneaks in all kinds of left-wing economic policies, and I'm not a big fan of left-wing policies or economic policies. So again, like tariffs, trade unions, stuff of that nature, they're really trying to bring all of this in as a way to deal with I guess you could say, the material problems that exist for society as it stands now. Um, and this is kind of the Marxist uh, argument against this liberalism of the Frankfurt School and stuff like that. Like, they're just trying to maintain what they can, and they're willing to sell out the workers so that they can gain more power. And that once we kind of dispense with how we feel about the workers, then there's nothing else to do. There's no binding agent because all of the other postmodern problems that we have, they aren't solved by disaggregating people into these arbitrary distinctions such as race, sex, etc. Now, one of the things to think about this when it comes to that is like All right. So, what are the right wing populist ideas really trying to promote, right? So, they have these left wing economic policies, but they're trying to promote this like right wing agenda against social progressivism. But is that actually the case? Are they legitimately fighting for social conservatism in the face of social progressivism? I actually don't think that they are. And I kind of give you an idea. So conservatives have consistently fought over time for equality in the law, and you can. And again, when I'm saying this conservatism, I'm using it to kind of lay into the idea of right wing liberalism. So it's always been massively important for equality under the law, but the understanding for the necessity of these hierarchical structures of society. And so when we dispense with those for whatever reason, in favor of, some policy that's going to benefit me at the expense of others, I seem to have a problem with it. And what is this anti-progressive kind of nature of conservatism isn't like progress is bad. It's that progress has to be tempered by a process of cost and benefit, right? So right wing populism has this like seriously fantastical idea um, that the 1950s and 60s were the apex of modern culture, and like I don't think that that's the case. I don't buy that argument. I actually like where we're at now. I think right now is the best time frame to exist on the planet. So this couldn't be further from the truth. So the progress that has been made has been good. I don't understand how that would be controversial, right? So we have this integration of women into the workforce. I have no problem with that. That the system wants that, right? That works in the favor of being able to produce more and have more to do. That creates more wealth, technological process. And then we have the movement of racial solidarity. I think that's massively beneficial. I don't know why we would want to create more racial animus through this right wing populism, right? And then the last is my biggest contention is like more free market principles being integrated into public policy. So one of the big problems that I have with this right wing populism is it's inherently anti free market, right? Like, no, I like the free market. I like the free market of ideas. I like the free market of goods, services. I like being able to label things through cost benefit scenarios. I like being able to label things in a certain way and structure them in such a way that we can align them with and per and rational beliefs and purposes, right? So I think that that's all to the benefit of our day and time. I don't know why that would be something they would have beef with, but it's something that they do have beef with. Um, and all of this, I think, all of these modernization activities have been beneficial for society. Right. Okay. The third. So my like kind of final beef is most often there's this issue that populism is guided almost entirely by emotion. Right. And this really bothers me for numerous purposes. For one, there's not a whole lot of critical thought that goes into right wing populism. It's reactionary, right? So this is the Neoreactionaries. I'm also going to toss them in here. So they're reacting to circumstances and they're trying to A, have some change, or B, have that change be integrated into maintaining the status quo. And that doesn't make any sense to me. Um, and so, because of these issues on being neo-reactionary, being populist, being anti-free market, and all of these things, you're going to get a lot of grifters that comes along with this, right? Um, and I'm going to point out one. This has kind of made it in the YouTube sphere of conservatives versus this populists that's been going on right now, and one of those is like Black Rifle Coffee Company, Heavy Duty Country, and a few others, right, that have kind of attached themselves to this America first kind of thing, where they're, we're all about America up until our profit margins begin to change, and then we're going to react differently based on those market structures, right? And so, to me, I think this is seriously antithetical to. Uh, oh man, I got a call. I'm unpopular. I think this is seriously antithetical to what I think of as the market, right? So I don't think the market as an institution in and of itself. I think the market fundamentally is a set of institutions for the past or present and future that we can kind of align ourselves with and have this multiplicative of choices that we can go into and look at and weigh the costs and benefits. So it's all about this, like, this process of choosing, this process of understanding on all of these different processes. Uh, and I know I'm beating that word down, but I think a lot of people seem to forget that conservatism in and of itself is a process of choice, right? And so when we have these grifter movements, right? So they're spawned by this Tea Party movement that happened in like '07, '08. It was like the right-wing populist counterculture, quote unquote, to the 99% movement, right? So the Wall Street, all of that. And so what happens is you come out with a product that is fundamentally associated with some political movement, right? And you realize at some point in time that you cannot sustain continued growth through this political organization. One, because everything changes, right? This is the nature of progress. It's going to change over time. And then to capture larger parts of the market, to get increased market share, you're going to have to change some of your marketing strategies and your branding, right? So what does this do? This means that a company brands itself to one sector to grow, and at some point it hits this maximum, so it can't gain from that base anymore. So to expand, they become more inclusive, which ultimately leads to damaging that core brand members. But it does increase total brand recognition. And now, this may be beneficial to the executives, but one of the big problems that this has is that this causes a deflationary process, because all systems, by being a system, is stretched to its maximum, right? And so it fundamentally causes deflation in the system itself. And why is this an issue? Is because it causes a loss of trust in right-wing conservatism as a whole, because they see these people that they're looking towards as kind of like their ideological leaders and stuff like that. They're willing to sell out, quote unquote, not saying that they are, but they're willing to change their brand, their messaging, and these things, so that they can capture a greater amount of the market share. So this does two things. It causes issues with how people should trust the market, because they're going to buy the arguments against neoliberalism of commodification, reification, the fetishization of commodities, and all of these things, and how that's caused problems. The what one would call the Fight Club issue, right? And it also causes mistrust, because it labels the conservatives as just a set of grifters. Like, oh well, they don't believe enough in their own stuff to maintain some level of principle. And I think both of those deflationary processes tend to disaggregate the right wing far more than the left wing. Even though the left wing has issues about infighting, canceling each other and all of that stuff, the core message can remain the same for the left wing, whereas the right wing, it's ultimately going to cause problems, because the tenets of the right wing are the thing that's called in order, whereas the progressives can maintain the idea that they're just constantly progressing, right? And so a lot of this fundamentally comes down to how conservatives and progressives, or whatever you want to have it, look at society. And ultimately, as a right-wing liberal or conservative, whatever you want to call me, I think it's just a mess. I just think this right-wing populism is just a mess. I think it sneaks in a lot of left-wing economic policies that I don't think is beneficial for the United States. Um, I also think that it focuses way too highly on the problems that society is facing when it comes to social progress, because I don't see an issue with having social progress. Like, yes, social progress has to be tempered, but social progress doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that it needs to be tested. Just going, it's bad, only Western values are good. I don't think that's an argument. I think that becomes recursive, in the sense that you're just going to say the same thing over and not allow for any changes in society to happen, whether they're good or bad. Because there does need to be a constant set of changes, but the process needs to be there for these changes to be, tested. And we're not getting that from right-wing populism. We're getting a lot of fantastical ideas on how society should work from a normative position, without any relation to how society does act under different circumstances. And this is a failure of right-wing populism, because it doesn't have a good philosophical base. And remember when I was talking about theory the other day, how theory is important, because theory allows an individual to kind of understand what society wants, how society ought to act, and stuff like that. And there's no right-wing populist theory. It's just reacting to the causes and conditions within society. So there's not a whole lot that can be garnered from it, other than what's going on is bad. And that doesn't help anybody, because it doesn't tell you how to fix the problem. All right. And this comes down to the last thing that I'm really going to say that I think is important here. As a society, we really need to come together and have better conversations about what is and isn't, right wing, what is and isn't the proper function of government, what is and isn't the proper function of our, goal attainment system, right? All of these things are important, and we need to converse about them. And the current goings on, they're not really useful for any conversations that we're all trying to have. It's just opposition to what the other party or other side thinks, and I don't think that's beneficial to myself, to the future, to the past. And that's just an overall problem of this populism rising. Now, I may end up doing a video on why right-wing populism is on the rise, because it fundamentally does have stuff to do with neoliberalism, with reaction to changing of progress, right? So to kind of give an idea, ultimately what has happened is that neoliberalism, so this right-wing liberalism, it won. It won the battle. It showed itself to be better than left-wing populism. It showed itself to be better than communism, in the short run, at least. And it showed itself to be better than, idealizing some traditional nature. And it did this by showing that growth and trade and all of these things could be good, right? We had less wars. We opened up borders. There was economic growth. There was technological growth. And all of these things are spawned by the changing of circumstances that are associated with this right-wing liberalism. So it won the fight in that era. But it ended up, defeating itself, because there was some group of people that are disaffected, and this disaffected group have some strong reactions to it. Now, I don't think that that's beneficial. All right, anyway, so that's what's happened. That's why populism's on the rise, for a lack of a better term. Neoliberalism won, and because it won, those on the left had to figure out, other avenues of approach, because attacking the free market wasn't it, chief, because it had pretty much won the argument. So instead of focusing on the structure of the market, they embraced the structure of the market and said, well, we have all of these other areas. They fell back onto some Weberian notions of class, polity, and stuff like that. And they were like, oh, well, we have all of these other issues that we can deal with now, because it seems like the market won the argument. So this caused obvious issues for the right wing, because now social progress is the last place that there's an argument about. And so they're reacting to that notion, and they're also bringing in the fact that the right-wing liberals won the argument in the economic sphere and said, oh, well, now we have to do something with the problems associated with neoliberalism. And I know, and again, like I said, I kind of figured this was going to be a long, drawn-out, crazy video. No, I hope that you've enjoyed it at least. But the last thing I'm going to say is, I really wish that conservatives would stand up and step up and take strong opinions against this movement of right-wing populism, and be like, hey, you don't have the necessary conditions, the necessary theoretical propositions to actually formulate anything. All you're doing is being reactionary and contrarian, and that's not helping anyone. So I think conservatives should step up and voice their opinion more strongly, and get these people to understand the importance of conservatism and this anti-progressivism that just tempers progress through a cost-benefit ratio, rather than just trying to get rid of progress in general and stay stagnant and isolated and doing all of these things. And there really needs to be a strong defense of conservative principles and the free market in the face of not just right-wing populism, but left-wing populism. We need to have these conversations. We need to do these battles. And until we do, we're going to continue down this path of voting purely out of reaction and emotion, and not out of logic and rationale. And with that, thank you once again for taking a walk with me through the Economicon. Hit like, share, subscribe. Shoot me a comment if you like this playing video games notion. I did not do this like overlaying my voice as I'm playing separately. I actually played while I was talking, so there might be some clicking in the background. I don't really edit. But if you like this, rather than seeing my mug all the time, please let me know if I should like have myself down here at the bottom of the screen or top or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, have a wonderful day, and thank you for taking a walk with the Economancer.